sometimes I look back and think, I could have had an Olympic medal.
You were competing against athletes with male levels of testosterone, Y chromosomes. They would not be able to race under today's rules. What difference would those rules have made to your career, possibly?
The sport looks very different now than it did when I was competing. It's changed a lot. At the start of my career, I had medals upgraded for drugs sheets. In the second half of my career, there was the DSD athletes, and as you say, they wouldn't be allowed to compete at now. It's easy to say, that I would have had a medal in Rio if the gold, silver and bronze hadn't been allowed to compete. I ran a Scottish record, and that still stands as my personal best in that final in Rio. Sometimes I look back and think, I could have had an Olympic medal, but I gave it my all that day, and that was the rules at the time. It's difficult for me to say, obviously I wish I was competing nowadays, but that was my time in the sport, and that's how it was.
You were devastated, though, understandably, after that final, and in some quarters you were made to look like a sore loser. I mean, how did it make you feel?
It was a really difficult time, and sadly it did kind of taint my experience in the sport and at the Olympics in Rio, and it just completely took away from my performance and my enjoyment in the sport. It wasn't on me to make that decision, and as you say, I was considered a sore loser for standing up for myself and for giving my opinion, and it was never something personally against the other athletes. It was just I studied law. That I did my dissertation on intersex athletes in sport, so it was something that I knew a lot about and was also passionate about the topic. So it never came from a place of being bitter or sore about losing. Yeah, and I look back now and changes have been made, and it just took a very long time for that to happen. And it's a very contentious topic, not just in sport but in society.
Do you think the IOC have done enough to protect the female category so far?
No, I think we saw in Paris that it's definitely not a resolved issue in Olympic sport. World Athletics have taken their stance on it and been pretty clear on what the rules need to be for athletics. But I think allowing individual sports to have their own say or their own rules on the topic, I don't think that's the right approach. I think it needs to be universal throughout the whole of the Olympics, and the IOC really need to make that decision and before we get to LA in 2028.